Howard began his association with street machines back in 1977 and has taken the last 9 years to achieve the ultimate with Rocky 3. This saga began in 1982 with Rock Solid, which was rebuilt for the second time during 9 months of 1989 to produce the superb machine it is today. The Summernats win in both the judged and overall categories is unique.
We've been prepared to go out and drive the car hard in the events. We picked up a 9th in Motorcarno out of 1,100 entrants that actually went through that event.
And the fame of the vehicle is such that it has been featured in every appropriate motor magazine, with street machine showpieces on 8 occasions. The $35,000 the Summernat promoters paid to purchase the vehicle did little to alleviate the sadness at parting.
No, that'd probably be lucky to cover the cost of the actual material cost in the car, and then of course there's the time myself and my friend Louis Priori that lives here, and many other friends locally and away that have helped with the car.
But Howard says he's ready to start again with a new shell to attempt to do it all again in 12 months' time.
Well, I guess it's a matter of staying there now. We've got very high profile within the sport itself, and it's really our life at the moment, so we'll be building to go back and to visit our friends all across Australia that we do now with the vehicle. And there is reasonable sponsorship out there now which will enable us to continue to do so.
Well,
It's blown my mind, Howard.
what about that? Welcome back, everybody.
Yes.
How's that for a flashback, mate?
Oh, mate. You were taller, you had a bit more hair. Is that what it was?
Yeah, comb it up.
You came it back.
Mate, that's it. I found all these old VHSs and I took them to someone and got them put onto a disc and stuff, and I'm looking back through them. So you'll see a bit more of that tonight.
Yep.
But yeah,
You still sound the same.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds good.
You're just a couple of years older.
Just a
that's all.
couple of years older. So I was trying to work that out. I think 30 something, 36 something.
30-ish.
Yeah. So mate, we left last time that we were pretty much, we'd done the Adelaide Hot Rod Show.
Yes.
Things have been good. Car was good. The photos I've got here now actually were from one of the Street Machine special magazines they brought out. It was a Ford special. And it's got some really nice photos of the car that because I've been going through all this stuff, that shows all the bits and pieces, you know, the belts and the really nice engine shot and all that sort of stuff. So of course this car, and they'd rated it as one of the 20 best ever Fords. And guess what? We're going to pull it apart and sell all the bits and do something else with it.
You're never happy, are you?
Never happy.
Never satisfied.
Never happy. So, if we remember correctly, so we've done the Hot Rod Show, didn't win, and the car that I mentioned at that show was Ian Hazel's Prem 70. Now, I've got a little photo of it there that, thanks very much to Street Machine, that I found on one of their sites. And that was in the Street Machine feature, and that car debuted at the 86 Nationals, and if my memory serves me correctly, it won top judge at that event, but it never left South Australia again after that. So every time we bobbed up in South Australia, he was there and give us a bit of a run. So that's how all that happened, and that was the car that I was talking about. But of course that's all history now, because we left the Hot Rod Show and I thought, look, I'm in Adelaide. If I'm going to take the car and pull it apart, I might take it out the drags and run, because I'd heard while I was down there the drags were on the Sunday afternoon or the Sunday night.
Fair enough.
So you can see the photo there is with the number 52 on the window, that we took it out to Adelaide International Raceway and ran a 14.4.
Well, that wasn't slow.
It probably wasn't too bad. I think by memory a phase 3 was good for about 14.1. So I was thinking, you know, it's around the mark. Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Well, it wasn't a race car, was it?
No.
It wasn't. It was just, you know, it was built to do shows.
Yeah, it was a tunnel ram 351, blah, 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 9X, So anyhow, that's what it did.
And like me, carried a bit of excess weight.
Yeah, and I'm happy to say that we did do that. So we ran it there. So we got home, and then I'd sort of found that, you know, we're driving fair lanes and all that sort of stuff, and we weren't out cruising in something nice that we should have been. So this particular XY bobbed up, and there was some boys in Broken Hill that used to seem to own every XY that was ever in town, and an old guy owned this, and they bought it off him, and anyhow I ended up buying it, and I think by memory I paid $4,500 for it. And it was a 351 auto GS Fairmont, which is a bit unusual, with Monza green saddle trim and really nice trim. I think I put carpet in it by memory, and the rest of it was all original. And blew it apart and turned it into a replica, faker, whatever you want to call them. And of course it was done at the same time that we were blowing the other one apart.
Lucky you still had the fair lane.
So
Drive around it.
still had a few cars from the taxis to drive.
Yeah.
There's never a shortage of cars around. So that photo there, I always get a good laugh out of that. So this would have been probably June.
Okay.
So we needed to get the driver going, and the other one next to it had to be done by Christmas.
Yep.
So 6-week build on the XY. So in the shed,
We've got some room now.
blew it over, got some room. So that was an acrylic. Had a mate come in and give me a bit of a hand with the dents and stuff because I really didn't have a lot of time. A couple of coats of acrylic, give her a buff, and then on the bar there's a couple of things about that when I was looking at it. There's one, check out the telephone.
Yes, old
It's
school
pretty cool.
rotary dial.
Rotary dial. And then the mirror on the back wall. This is in the lounge room at the house. That mirror is now behind me in this bar. So I thought that was interesting. But all the rest of the stuff on the bar there was all some new old stock, some repos, some second-hand GT stuff. And I think, once again, by memory, all of those bits and the suspension and the wheels was about 2.5.
Okay.
So I'm about $7,000 in, and I've got what turned out to be a super nice driver.
Yeah.
So that's it. They're all done on the front lawn, parked up.
You had to have something nice for Heather to drive.
That's it.
The shopping car.
Well, but also to go somewhere.
Like
So
go to
if
cruise,
if you're going even to Adelaide Hot Rod Show or something,
Yeah,
and you're not showing a car, then you can't turn up in a
Can't
six
drive.
on the fair lane,
You
mate.
can't drive around in a taxi, mate.
Yeah, that's
No.
it. So that shot there's out the front of Mark Sanders' workshop actually in Adelaide. So I don't know whether Heather had come down because when we were down camp for the week, couple of weeks, and then that's at Mum and Dad's place in Adelaide.
Yep.
And we went over to see Louie's mum, lived in Albury,
Okay.
and we'd gone over there with Lou and doing a bit of a family thing. And you can see there's no number plate there because.
Missing.
Because I'm in the process of rebuilding the car, I'd taken the GT Ford plate off the show car and put it on the XY, and someone decided they wanted it more than me. So it went missing in Albury, unfortunately. So anyhow, things happen, so we just got another one. You got young Lee hanging out the window there. So kids got to see the snow, and then that's a nice family shot. I reckon that's at the Adelaide Hot Rod Show that year because we were... No, it wouldn't have been. Oh, it might have been. I can't remember. Just a nice photo. And then one Heather, proud as punch with her car, because it was always Heather's car.
That's right.
It was Heather's XY. It wasn't my car, that one.
No.
So that's just a little sideline, another story. It actually ended up getting a magazine shoot and bobbed up a few times in a couple of magazines as a GT because it was a very good copy.
Yeah.
But the main game was back on the car. So it's one of those things where you pull it apart and you go, oh, what have I done?
Well, it looked good to start with, didn't it?
Well, I mean, we've taken that car, it's been in the magazines,
Yep.
it won the Australian title, done all those things, but as you said, I wasn't happy. So I was surprised when I pulled it apart this time because I'd made up my mind we're going to bare metal it because it already had 2 coats of burgundy,
Yep.
one over the other. And when I went in and got right down to the bottom, it turned out I hadn't actually taken all the green off it in some places. Must have got a bit impatient
Yes.
at the time, and like I've always said, I was learning, I was going anyhow. So the photo there with the guy on the grinder, that's Mark Sanders. So Mark was always fairly opinionated about what was right and wrong with people's suspension on their cars,
Okay.
which I'd had a chat to him about those sort of things. That sometimes
That would have been
not
likely.
all of us know everything about things. So I said, seeing you know so much about it, maybe you better get involved with the rebuild. So Mark did the front and rear suspension on the car. We basically chopped all the Ford stuff out and then made our own front and rear stainless steel.
Okay.
So the front end was a double wishbone with a coilover,
Yep.
and then the rear was a 4-bar with a coilover. But to get it done in a hurry, because I'm always in a hurry, as you know,
Always.
in a hurry, Louis and I took a couple of camp stretches down and we stayed at the workshop and used to pull the bed out, have a snooze, get up in the morning, work all day,
You like living in the shed, don't you?
bang, bang, bang,
Yeah.
back to back.
Yep.
So there I am with the Oxy, and then Mark's like the grinder, obviously. And he'd pretty much dummied everything up on the floor and put the stub axles, in the factory position,
In
and then
position,
welded
yep.
them to the
Yep.
body, and then made everything else around it. So I mean, people would look at that today and go, whoa, don't know if I'd do it like
A
that.
bit
But
of spaghetti now, but yeah.
that's how it was done.
That's right.
And there's the rear, so that's him under there somewhere with the mask on, doing a bit of welding. And the diff, that was the 9-inch out of the XC, and it always looked a bit skinny, but I think he got a bit carried away.
Put it on
It's
a weight
pretty
gain program.
pretty full on looking, braced
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
massive looking diff, which looked the part. I mean, it didn't need to be that heavy, but it looked the part. And remembering, we're talking 1990,
Yes.
so all we're doing is copying what we're seeing in a magazine off somebody drag car or something. And then that photo, I've put in now a little bit out of sequence, because when we pulled the car apart, I got all these parts now. So I've got Recaros, front and back Recaros, we've got roll cages, wheels, all those things. So I had a garage sale in Broken Hill and sold nothing.
You're not real successful, was it?
People come around and went, nah, too dear, mate. Like, it's too good, type of deal. So while we're in Adelaide, the little ad you see there, we ran that in the Adelaide paper and moved a lot of that gear on. So yeah, come out to Mark's workshop type of deal and check it out, and we'll go through and show you what we got.
3 cassette players.
3 cassette players, Formula steering wheel,
Yeah.
the Sherry drag shifter. I can't remember, I'm sure that would have sold at that time, but it was like, you know, get some dollars back in, we need some coin so we can move forward. So all this is going on, so we've done the suspension, the car back home, but I'm still going to work during the day.
That's only in your spare time.
In my spare time, yeah. So I'd been with Dad long enough, had some long service. So that's how I ended up, you know, a couple of weeks off here, and it seemed like I was never home, but I'd been 10 years with the family business. So had a few extra holidays to be able to take. So we'd sort of going pretty well with that, time-wise. But of course I'm still doing Chamber of Commerce and tourism and all those sorts of things. And this next photo now was taken to go on the wall in the Chamber office because I'd become the next president.
El Presidente.
El Presidente.
Yes.
So, only a young fella, obviously still.
Yep.
And I'd been involved in the organisation by that stage probably for 10 years. And as I'd said earlier, got pretty heavily involved in industrial relations. But it moved on to a stage whereby I felt that I could contribute to the organisation as a whole.
Yep.
And in the next one, you'll see some of the things that we managed to do with the Chamber when I was there as president. And there was 2 or 3 of us that sort of took turns over a period of time because it's a bit of a commitment to do it.
Yep.
But once again, with the support of the old man and the business, I was able to do that. So yeah, that was interesting. And then the next little clip there, you can see me taking on the unions a bit. I always find it very interesting that I think there's a definite need for the union side of things.
Yep.
Because not all bosses are good bosses.
True.
And then by the same token, not all union bosses are good bosses. So I think from both sides, there's a need for a balance and there's need for both. And I'd just been in a position where I spent a lot of time working with the Chamber and negotiating and having the odd debate with the union about all sorts of things. And Broken Hill unionism was a lot different because we actually managed our own industrial relations in Broken Hill as a separate set of conditions.
Yeah.
So it was quite different. I'm not going to get all bogged down on that, but I threw those in because the timelines were right. But we need to get a car built because time's marching by.
And you pulled it apart.
So yeah, it got ripped down, and you would have seen in the last one where I had a few little problems, teething problems with some of the filler in the engine bay and stuff. So I decided that it all needed to come off and get redone. And of course nowadays when I look at this, I think, well, you wouldn't do it like that anymore because we were always taught that you ground up the bare metal with 36 grit, bogged it up and away you went, where of course nowadays we do it totally different. So back then, plenty of filler, but you'll see in all the photo there, everything's fully welded and ground up before it was filled, but no shortage of filler. And a lot of panels were applied whereby when you look from underneath there wasn't any joins, and it was looking for that clean transition all the way through.
Yep.
And then externally I was looking to do something different, so I'd gone with the Hornet scoop, changed the wheels up, got rid of the strikers, did a bit of a deal with Dragway to get a better price on some wheels to run the Dragways on it, and had a rush of blood and decided to get rid of the door handles. So I'd been reading a bit of
Yep.
mini truck stuff.
Yep.
And I loved all their graphics and a lot of the stuff they're doing. And they were doing a lot of the door poppers and things. And I seen an article on being able to do the door handles, but manually with the buttons on the outside of the door. So that's where I got the idea from and how to be able to do it.
Well, you had to be different too, didn't you? I mean, like, if you're going to win something or you're going to go chasing those trophies,
Yeah.
point of difference as well. And
Yeah, and just being clean, you know, the clean lines down the sides and all those sorts of things. So I'd always had that bit of a feeling that I wanted things to be, you know, fairly close as legal as I could make it.
Yep.
And this would pass, and in the end this car ended up being engineered to be able to give it away as a promotional vehicle. It needed to be engineered.
Yep.
And it passed engineering because it could be opened manually externally. Yeah. So it turned into a much bigger job than it should have been though. You know, it should have been something fairly simple to do, but it ended up being quite substantial. And then the house next to us, where we lived there, belonged to Coles, as in the store.
Yep.
And the manager used to live there. And I'm telling him I've got drama trying to move stuff around, so he brought home a pallet trolley for me to borrow for a couple of weeks or a couple of months.
Yeah.
So that's why we got a pallet trolley. So we had stuff on pallets so we could move things around.
Yep.
And a lot of the stuff that was on the car and the Burgundy car was all chrome plated, so we'd got rid of the chrome extractors and a lot of the bits and pieces, and we're going back to more painted and, you know, more that I guess it was coming out of the States, that whole mono colour thing with the pastel colours, and lots of it. And you can see there we're back up on the side again, and I've made a few changes because we've changed the suspension on the back, and then we've welded up a few more bits, and you can see old hoops in the background there. So I don't know if he was working that day or just around for a bit of moral support.
Looks like he's supervising.
Yeah. Kimmy used to drop around on a Sunday arvo just to make sure I was working.
Yep.
Keep me motivated.
Crack the whip.
Crack the whip a bit, make sure I was getting a bit done.
Yeah.
And then that was the neighbour. So you can sort of see it, I guess, that his nickname was Booney.
He's got that. Yes.
Yeah. So he used to like coming over and having a bit of a yarn and getting his hands dirty a bit, so it was handy. And then I got a laugh now. I see these photos and I'm clearly painting in the workshop, in acrylic, mind you, but still painting in the workshop, and all the trophies and everything else is just all sitting around on the walls. But there wasn't anywhere else to do it, except outside under the grapevines.
It's an Astill trait, that. Yeah. Bits hanging everywhere.
Bits hanging everywhere. So that's it, getting polished. So the diff's done there, and the old acrylic, that would have all been colour sanded and polished. And I'd gone back to what I had originally done with the Burgundy car. So when I first built that, everything was painted, and then the judges are telling me it's not shiny enough, so I chromed it all.
Now we're going back.
And now I'm going back.
Full circle.
Yeah, and I think the industry had sort of, you know, the game had caught up a bit to what I had in my head.
A bit ahead of the
I was
time.
a bit too ahead of the times, I think. Yeah, so back to paint. And then, of course, the graphics. You know, the most standout thing about this whole car was the graphics. And to be honest, it was never meant to have been that full on.
No.
So I don't know if you can remember the old Heartbeat of America.
Yes.
You know, the Chevy logo, and it used to have the heartbeat and the Chevy logo and stuff. Well, I always sort of thought that was cool, but being a Ford man, well, I couldn't sort of copy that. But I like the fact that it, you know, a lot of the US cars ran it along the side of the car.
Yep.
So I talked to Ralph. So Ralph's Designs did the graphics, and I met Ralph at a couple of the Street Machine shows. So this Australian Street Machine Federation, Ralph used to do artwork. So this is a calendar.
Yep.
And he'd done my car there, and you know, he used to do all that sort of stuff. So I'd met him in a few shows, and I was talking to him at a show about, you know, doing something a bit different with the graphics. And I'd had the Rock Solid on the boot lid.
Yep.
And the idea was what you now see as Rock 3 was to go on the lower back door. You know, probably about this big.
Little tasteful,
Yeah,
small mural
and
type.
maybe something going forward. I said to him, you know, like a bit of a heartbeat, but I don't want to do a heartbeat. So we've done a deal, and I've flown him up from Melbourne to stay for 7 days with us at home.
Yep.
And do the graphics, you know, and we do the two, one, you know, one either side, blah,
Yep.
blah, blah. So he brought up his little black box there that was like an overhead projector, and he'd drawn up what he thought would be the go for the graphics and had it as a transparency and set it up, put it up on the car.
Project it onto the side of the car.
And work out where we're going to put it.
Yep.
So I've gone, that looks pretty good, Ralph, but I reckon it could be bigger. So I've picked up the...
It's an Astill trait. Everything's got to be bigger and better.
Texas, mate. So I picked up the box and I've started walking back and I'm going, oh yeah, this is looking good. And he's going, no. And I'm going, yeah. So we ended up the whole side of the car, of course. And he's going, I can't do that in a week. I said, well, I'll give you a hand. We'll be right.
How hard can it be?
Don't worry about it. So 7 days and he worked hard. We locked him up pretty much. And he went on strike. I think it was the Wednesday. He said, like, I've got to go to the pub and have a beer. And I go, no, I've got to work. And he goes, if I can't go out tonight, I'm going home. So we took him out. And I got some video that won't be in this one. We were having a few drinks after we got home from that night. So, some interesting stuff there. That'll probably be in the build series. So what he's got there, that's what they used to call frisket. I don't know if it's probably still called, and it was like a self-adhesive mask, but really wide, and then they'd get their little scalpel out and cut their graphics into it. So that was done, and this is a fair way into it, where he's doing the colours and all the different bits and pieces.
It's not just on the back door anymore, Howard, is it? It's definitely
gone the whole shooting match.
Lot.
So he had to make a couple of mods to the way it was going to be, but if you can imagine that, just down to the size of the back door, it would have looked pretty average. Just so. Now see on the back wheel there's a little square panel.
Yes.
When he turned up, I said, how are you going to go about it? And he said, well, he'd asked me he got me to get the colours, so I had spray chief candies and stuff all ready to go. And he said, we'll paint out a little bit of panel and I'll just make it up as I go, but we'll do a test run, and if you're happy, we'll just keep doing that. So he said, I need a bit of steel. And I thought, well, I'll do a bit of 100 round.
Always got something lying around.
Always something lying around. So we'd just done an XY, hadn't we?
Of course.
So when you do a car, you need to
cut a hole out for the
cut
bonnet
a hole
scoop.
for the bonnet scoop. So as you can tell, I still have it. Like
Doesn't
most
throw
things,
anything away.
Not throwing nothing away. So that was the test panel. And he'd do that and go, oh, what do you think of that? And you can see a few different colours here and a bit of purple. And then we worked out how we'd go about it to be able to put it on the car. So that's the process, if you like, in a very short version. And fortunately, I found some old footage. And there's Ralph on the airbrush doing that little panel. So when I do the build series, I've got some more of that, so I'll be able to add some of that in. But most of it was hard masked. And then sprayed with a big gun, and then he come through with the airbrush and added in the highlights to make the neon look like neon and all those sorts of things. And I appreciate it far more now that I've done an airbrush course 8 or 9 years ago now, but was really interesting to watch the process about how that went on and how he got through all of that. So yeah, that was really cool. And then once he left, I had to clear it. And there were so many layers of colours and the depth, and I wanted it flat. I didn't want to be able to see that. So the amount of time I spent trying to spray that, and I would say it probably had 3 times more clear than it needed because I was so shit scared of cutting through it.
And you can tell that your father was a plumber.
Why?
Well, something about, anyway. We'll leave that one alone.
We'll leave that alone. So I eventually got there and blocked it out. And what I was still impressed with to this day is that the bright neon colours on there were sign writers' colours, and they were, water-based for doing, on the windows of a shop and that sort of stuff. And we never knew how long they'd last. But the car's probably never seen a lot of sunlight. But I was amazed when we did some work on it for Summernats 30 that all those colours are still vibrant and nothing's played up, and the clear still looks good, and it buffed up really nice. So
this was such a big thing, Howard. I mean, everyone remembers back the van days, the murals and the graphics on vans, but no one had done anything like this. This was next level.
It sort of blew everyone away.
It's
And I mean, I think Ralph's colour selection had a lot to do with it. just conceptually, like I wouldn't have ever come up with having triangles blown apart and all those sorts of things. But when you look at the colours just work so well together.
Yep.
And to this day, you know, people still love the car and love the colours. But of course, we've got the graphics done.
That was only the paint.
Now we've got to try and get the car back together.
Blast the thing together.
So people only recently have asked about, you know, why would you rebuild a car like that? Why wouldn't you either keep it or sell it and build another one? And the part of my thinking behind that is that, say the engine there, I just got to repaint it. I don't have to then grind things and all the rest of it. So there's so many of the small parts and all of those things, the chrome around the windows and all that, you don't have to go out and redo them because you're just going to change the colour or give them a quick polish. And you can see old Louis there. I'm pretty sure by memory Louis went on, because him and his missus used to go overseas a bit. And when I started this project, he was overseas. So when he's come home, he's gone,
what happened?
What have you done? So fortunately he was helping me out because I was under the pump and I was looking at that photo today with Heather and I was having a bit of a laugh. He's got the pressure pack out and he's like 3 foot from the front of the car and giving him a coat of paint. But I mean, that's the way we worked and we're under the pump all the time. And of course, when I did this, I needed something a bit different in the engine bay. So I've gone with the nitrous direct port. And I'd really never had any intention I was going to get a lot of use out of that. It was more about visual, you know, the whole visual impact. And I found this.
Doesn't throw anything away, people. It just doesn't.
Which is really, really quite interesting that I still had that. And $1,200 in 1989. I don't quite know how I justified that.
No, and you only had 11 days to pay it by the looks of that.
I didn't see that.
What made me laugh is it's receipt number 17 because they didn't sell a lot of these because they were $1,200.
Yeah, well.
But it looked impressive.
It looked impressive. I always liked it. And of course I got it and then changed the colours, all the fittings and stuff and, you know.
Yeah. You don't leave anything as it is.
Do what you got to do. Right. So that's that double wishbone with the coilover. It seemed to work okay. To get it as low as it was, we actually end up using a Chevy, 60-something Chev spindle.
Okay. Yep.
And the Chev spindle had the same shaft size as the Falcon for the actual wheel bearing, because it's, you know, when I say the Falcon, I think HQ and XA are the same anyhow.
The same,
But all of the tapers, the tapers and everything all worked the same, but it was like having a 2-inch drop spindle. Yeah, so that worked really well, and that was one of Mark's ideas. And then of course the trim, we've chucked out all the Recaros, the roll cage,
the shifter's gone,
all that sort of stuff. And when this car was being done, Cadzilla come out in the US.
Yes.
And I really love that car. That in every way, really. I mean, the colour, conceptually, the way it was drawn by Foose and then built by Coddington and all that sort of, just really blew my mind, the amount of work that was in that. But the trim in that was also very special and very different. And I was looking to go a bit more down the hot rod style trim. And Rod Lingard was a very good hot rod trimmer that lived in Broken Hill. Okay. And I approached Rod about doing the car. And he's probably a little bit reluctant at the start, but we worked out a bit of an arrangement. And was able to do that. And this was the first time that I'd actually gone down the track of doing glued-in carpets. Okay. So, you know, the edges were done and then a drop-in carpet square with an edging, which you've seen in the Mustang. So Rod did that car as well. So it was a real change-up for me in relation to a lot of that sort of things and the way the door trims were done. And then we took the headrests off the seats, made them more like XY. But one of the good stories about the build was that when I took the seats out the Rod, I said, I want you to do them like Cadzilla, which had no piping. Okay. And he's gone, Howard, that's going to look terrible. Now look at this, Rod, look how cool this is. You know, I want to do it like that. And he's going, Howard, trust me, I've been doing this all my life. You don't want to do that. I've gone, that's what I want you to do. So I've gone home, and I get a call a couple of days later, and Rod goes, why don't you come out and look at something? What? He goes, just come out and have a look. So I've driven out there, and he goes, right, I've got 2 seats. one with piping, one without piping. Now, I've got to redo one or the other, and I don't care which one it is. So you tell me which one you like the best. I said, geez, the one with the piping looks good, doesn't it, Rod? So sometimes you got to listen
Yep.
to the people that know. So even though it looked good in a picture, it didn't look real good in real life. So, yeah, Rod was very good at what he did.
Yep.
And this car won trim quite a few times. But one of the other novel things that we're looking at now is with the dash, I decided I wanted to do something different. And I'd blanked off the heater stuff and all before because we didn't have a heater or nothing in it anyhow. And I don't know at what stage we chucked that out because you meant to have it for Reggie, but anyhow, we didn't have one. So I said to Louis, I wouldn't mind doing, 3 pods, rather than the 2. So the picture you see there now, on the left hand, the 3rd pod, we basically plastic welded back in the day with a soldering iron, and then those 3 gauges was 3 VDO gauges that Louis then made a backing plate, because he was a fitter.
Yep.
Like yourself, though. So he'd made that up.
Yep.
And
make it look a factory.
it looked so original, it was unbelievable. And then the switches on the side were, I think, Falcon, headlight switch, or might have been just a Hella switch or something. So that was all plastic welded and then, primed and painted.
But look factory.
But look factory. And in fact, I know at a couple of the hot rod shows when I taught the judges after, they didn't even know we'd done it.
Because you have to point it out to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we've gone with, you can see the Fairlane lights in the door trims. The console, I think, was EB by memory, and then where the armrest effectively is now was just a hollow shell, and we filled that up and then sent that down to Dash Original in Adelaide and got it redone. And the factory shifter out of whatever was the new car then was in the taxis, because we had like 10 cars on the go, so there was always plenty of parts around. And then it had a head unit out of one of those cars we'd bought new for a taxi, but of course you've got to have taxi meters and all that, and different radios and things. So we ended up, I stuck one of the new ones out of one of those in it.
New fancy cassette.
Cassette player. It's pretty cool.
It's better than the old 8 tracks.
That's it, mate. Yeah. And all new seat belts, and it was different. I look at it now and go, yeah, I'm not sure about that, but
this is 30 plus years ago.
Exactly right. And it's funny where the seatbelt there goes on the pillar. We're messing around cutting and welding them on Boss XC now.
Yes.
Because they're an XC one, which obviously this was an XA. Yep. So all those bits and pieces, and then the seat belts were out of, I can't remember, late model. And then I'd extended the centre, the actual tail shaft
transmission hump.
Yeah, I'd sort of squared that up and just out of a bit of tin, and then so the carpets would look a bit nicer, and then did the aero pockets in the back of the seats, which was just all for points, mate.
Yeah.
Well, all looked good, and it did that.
You're chasing trophies, you've got to appeal to the judges.
It won a few trim trophies. So lo and behold, we eventually got there. So by the end of the year, we're 7 months into the build, and we got to warm up with the XY, and I mean we were short on, and I mean I did that a lot. I always got to the show, but more often than not there was a few loose ends that needed tidying up when we got home. But it had the look, it had the bang for the buck, and when I think back nowadays, if it wasn't for Mum and Dad being able to support what I was doing, both from a time point of view, because I mean I'm going to work pretty tired, and with this particular car, I chewed off more than I could really handle financially, and the old man gave me a loan for a couple of months to get it finished because the credit card was full.
Yep.
And I was running out of time and running out of money real quick. And
those deadlines get there quick.
Yeah, so the old fella helped out with that, which was good. He ended up getting paid back, but it made a difference. And I've thrown in this car now, is one of those little stories that you only get told in a biography, I guess, is that when Ralph came out and did the graphics, we'd sort of done all that, and he's gone home, and back then there wasn't a lot of this, you weren't texting and stuff.
No.
If you wanted to show him a picture, you had to put it in a letter and send it off. So about a week before Christmas, we got get the Christmas cards back then. Christmas card turns up, and this photo is in the Christmas card, and it's just got Merry Christmas, Ralph. And I've gone,
What's going on here?
What's going on here? That looks like my graphics.
Yeah.
So I said to Heather, I was going to check this out. And she's going, what the hell's that? And I don't know if I rang him. I think I would have rang him, whatever. Anyhow, I wasn't very impressed. And I thought, oh, just get over it. So Heather's gone off. And she's gone, I want you to paint over the graphics. I go, and you what?
All that work? No.
I want you to paint over them. You know, like all this trouble, all this money, why in the hell would we want to take a car to the Summernats that's got the same graphics as another car? And I'm going, well, maybe it's not going to the Summernats. But of course, it did go to the Summernats. Fortunately for us, we seem to have stood out a bit more or something, and a lot of people wouldn't even know that existed. But there was a very short period of time there that Rock 3, as we know it, may not have happened. Because it could have potentially, because Heather can be a bit forceful.
No.
As you've seen.
Love you, Heather. Love you, Heather.
Yeah, lovely. So, anyhow, threw that in.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what you get being a pioneer, a leader.
Innovator.
So, innovator, that's the word.
That's the word.
That's the word.
So,
People like to copy it.
So we're done. We're off the Summernats. So this year, we used to camp. I've hired caravans to be at the showgrounds, all that stuff. The kids are getting a bit older, and we ended up, and I don't know whether it was called the Carousel Land or what it was, but it basically had little 2-bedroom units, and we used to hire one of those so the kids can run around, that sort of stuff. And I'm out the front here now, and I always preach to you, sometimes it's easier to pull stuff apart to clean than it is to... So I dare say here I've just decided I need to clean in behind the grill, so I'll just take it off.
Take the grill out. And the lights.
Whatever. So,
and everything else.
And everything else. So I'm not really 100% sure. I know it's at the Nats. It might have been after driving events. You know, so you go out and do the event Saturday, but then you still got to go in for judging and all that sort of stuff. So we're back at the hotel, or back at the unit. It looks like Louise in the foreground there, and the trailer. And then this next photo I threw in, see the Falcon coupe on the left?
Yes.
That was Louis' dad's. He bought that brand new, and I think at that point Louis was trying to sell it for his dad, so he said, I'll take it over to the Nats and put a for sale in the window. Imagine that now.
God, you'd be beating them off with a stick.
Unbelievable. So yeah, we all camped up there. That was pretty cool. And then this next photo, you can see Lee in the front there with his Batman shirt on. And then Heather and I are right in the middle. These guys were a pretty big club from down in Melbourne that ran a big outdoor show down there at Burwood each year. And I'd been there previously and sort of hooked up with these guys and agreed to be part of their show that year with the car. And looks like one of those units. They must have been just up the road having a couple of drinks as well. But we used to have a lot of fun. So here we are back at the Summernats. So I always say that, you know, my spot's out the front of Building B. We used to camp there, and that's where we used to hang out. So as you can tell there, that's Mark Sanders' Tirana there, and next to that, the EH is Legal 8, which I see a picture in one of the mags the other day or on Facebook or something. It's still going. It's done a couple of Targas, Targa Tasmania, and still a very used, and it was the first legal V8 in South Australia in that engineered you know, EH type area, and a very well built car back in the day. So obviously having a bit of a tub there, and then that's Ralph, picture of Ralph with the trophy for best graphics. So that year, like I said, we were a bit untidy in the finishing of the car, but we top 10 graphics, interior, mild custom that year, I reckon. So that car was funny because it had been in sedan, it had been in mild custom, and it was in another class, and the car really hadn't changed. It was just someone else classifying it. So we're on a roll in, so now we're off doing shows. So these next couple of photos are Melbourne Hot Rod Show. So that was very successful for us, and the judges, you know, really did love the car that year. So we won top street machine. And a nice photo, Heather and I there with the mug, which is behind me on the wall. I had to get the Silvo out, give it a bit of a polish up. It's a bit past it, doesn't look too bad, but it's getting a bit tired. And at that show, I'm sort of thinking about the next car already. And I'd seen a really nice car in the US, like a single spinner in a businessman's coupe that I thought looked pretty darn cool. And I started looking around, and this guy was selling this restored spinner, and I thought, I'll get on to him and I had a chat, and I'd organised some funding to be able to buy that car. And then when I got there, or when he got to the show to show me the car, I was sort of going, whoa, I don't think I'll make that work.
You weren't feeling the love.
I wasn't feeling the love.
No.
And the idea was to do something like that with it. And the one I'd seen in the States was, Pro Street, bigs and littles and all that sort of stuff. But as it turned out, that didn't happen, and we ended up doing the Fairlane. So that happened at that show. So I'm only 2 months into showing this car, and I'm already thinking about the next one, as you do.
That sounds like you. Yep.
Yeah. So this is Burwood. So big outdoor show. Lots going on there, and I think it was forecast for rain. And I had all my display, and I wanted to sort of do it all. So we got a marquee, and it didn't rain, I don't think, although it looks a bit wet there. But the car looked really good that day, and I can't remember exactly how we did at that show off the top of my head. But we left there, so that was long weekend, the week after the long weekend in January, and then off to Adelaide for February for the Australian Street Machine Federation.
Yep.
And we won, I believe, top car and top engineered and something else. So that's Heather and I in our nice colours, mate.
Yes.
Like the butcher shorts.
Very bright.
And I like that idea with the tent. So I did the same thing in Adelaide. And got a big crowd and did really well there. But I should have got one for Wagga.
No tent in.
We actually got one, but it didn't stay up for long.
Yeah.
It was a terribly windy and raining, and so we all camped up there, and we had a couple of caravans again that I'd hired there. That sort of became the choice in the end, was that because we got everything else to take there, and you got a family and all, you just ring the local caravan mob, get them to drop a caravan over to the venue, and that way you can stay on site and have somewhere decent to sleep. So driving events, and then it had rained pretty heavy, and they still ran the driving events, and I was pretty keen on Grand Champion or top
I'm a bit worried about
overall.
the hair though, Howard. Is it?
You like that, mate?
You've been going
It's
to
a bit
Heather's
of colour.
hairdresser, haven't you?
Yeah. Back when I had hair.
Trying to match the tyres.
Back when I had hair.
I'm just jealous.
Well, things you do, mate.
That's
things
it.
you do. So, lots of mud.
Yep.
But fortunately, it all worked out well. So we ended up with, and that's this fella here. So we really, when you talk about trophy hunting,
that's a big trophy.
well and truly gone up in the market now. So that one's the top overall, which is now, of course, known as Grand Champion. And we won Entrance Choice as well at that show.
Yep.
Not sure what one judge that year. Must have been a pretty good rocket. And then we had a few repairs to do. Because to do the driving events, I had a tap to turn the brakes on and off on the rear. So you turn the wheels a bit, show off a bit. And I forgot to turn it back on. So I've gone hooking down to go away and straight into the hay bale. So unfortunately, it pushed the guard back and chipped the graphics as well. So I had to do a bit of a back mask, repair the guard, back mask the graphics on the door. And it's one of those things, and I've told you a few times since you've been hanging around, that I've seen someone do that, so I should be able to do it.
Can't be that hard.
So I watched Ralph. So
someone's done it before.
Someone's done it before.
Yep.
So did a few repairs, fixed them up,
Yep.
painted that, got it all sorted out and all cleaned up to head up to Brisbane for the Hot Rod Show. So as you can imagine, we're clocking up a few Ks, and I know because I had a bit of a check the other day. We did 22,000 kilometres in 1990, chasing car shows and doing events for Chick to, which I thought of that now because while I'm up at Brisbane, I'm thinking I'm going to need to get rid of this car so that I can move on and build the next one I'm thinking
project.
about.
Yep.
Yeah. So I said to Chick at lunch, because he used to be up there promoting the Summernats, you need to buy my car and raffle it or give it away or do something with it.
Yep.
So I worked on him in Brisbane, and then we went to Adelaide, and I worked on him in Adelaide, and eventually we managed to do a deal where the idea was to, I think the first idea I put to him was that him and I could raffle it, give some money to charity, and I can get paid for the car, and we can all make a buck and move on. But of course, that wasn't never going to happen legally, so we went down the sell a program and do it that way. So by this stage, the deal's done, and what he threw back on me is, we can do the deal provided you help us sell the programs. So I had to go to the ACT show and go in September, go to Bathurst and sell tickets, or sell programs at Bathurst, and then at the Bathurst, and then do the Sydney Motor Show, which was a fortnight in Sydney. And I said, that's fine as long as you pay me accommodation and stuff. They go, hey, that's cool. So all of a sudden we're on a junket again, having a good time. So this shot here is at the ACT show, and so is that one, and that's in Building B, I'm pretty sure, looking at it. The downside is that I sort of had half noticed it, but not really, is that where I'd repaired the door handles, once I'd welded them up, the filler was bleeding through the blue, and they spotted it. So
some buildings have better lighting than
others. So what are we going to do about this, Howard? So I've gone, oh, here we go. So I said, I'll fix it. Don't worry about it, I'll fix it. So this is a cool shot. Heather said today, she loves this shot. So that's the kids. So we had the F-250, of course, had the back seat in the back, and the kids pretty much went everywhere with us, or do a lot of the shows. And they're growing up, of course, and then while we're doing that show and go, took the opportunity to do a few touristy things, which I never normally got to do. I'm normally at the show, but because we're not competing, it was just a static thing. Did the Floriade,
yes.
Yep. And then home to repair.
Fix the door.
So I went and seen my paint supplier, and he goes, you're going to have to put a bleed sealer over it. Right. So as you can do, Backmaster Graphics, put a black bleed sealer on it, and then primed it, took the mask back off, checked all my edges, remasked it, put the blue back on it, re-cleared it, all good.
Job's good.
I think it was a couple of weeks.
Yep.
So, having now seen the car like 20 odd years later, it still looks fine, and you can't tell where I've been. So I was pretty happy about it. And I had to go back and put all that little edge around, all the neon and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'd sort of impressed myself there. So there's a good one of the young fella. So Taekwondo, Lethal Lee with the blue belt on. And I think the next one, oh no. So I've still got this thing in my head, I've got to find a car. So this was a car built by Trepanier in the US.
Yes.
And it was the trend, you know, the pastel colours, the bigs and littles, you know, like the big blocks and that whole pro street look. And I thought, well, I can't build an Impala. It's going to have to be a Ford, so I need a Ford with wings. So I'm looking around Brayton Hill, and I find this one in a yard.
Glamour.
Down the end.
Absolute glamour.
Absolute glamour. So I give this guy a bit of a hard time. No, it's not for sale. I'm going to do it up one day.
One of those blokes. I'm going to do it up one day.
So I end up doing a deal, and I end up, as you can, I bought it for $650 on the 15th of September 1990.
Mate, you couldn't buy 4 hubcaps for $650 these days. Goodness
so it had
me.
been a bush car, and it did have a lot of rust, and you'll see that in the next episode. But it was going to fulfil the need, and that's it on the driveway. So I've taken all the wheels off. It's sitting on the front drums.
Mocked up with a bit of cardboard.
And then the back, you can just see the blue under the back of it. That's the trolley jack under the tow bar to get the height right. And I reckon that's about the height it needed to be. And then that's it sitting in the shed with the blue car waiting its turn.
Waiting to get
its turn. So we just needed to keep fiddling with the blue one and keep it up to scratch to give it away. And then part of that process, this is at Bathurst, so that's young Lee there. Looks like he's working the Summernats stand. Selling a few programs, and then the car was next to that under the tent. So we spent the 3 days there. That was a really good few days. They'd got a B&B, we now call an Airbnb, but it was basically rented a house, and we all stayed there and spent some good times with Chick and his family. And then this was the motor show. So we're at Sydney for the 2 weeks with the car set up there with all the trophies. And at the same time, I've had a concept drawing done by Vespa, Bigs and Littles, that whole Trepanier look. And on the guard there, it's got 500. I was going to do a 500 big block Ford with a split dominator, and I had this whole thing schemed up in my head. And at that show, Tim Britton, the editor of Street Machine magazine, had come in for a bit of a look to see what Chick was up to, and I managed to get a bit of time with him.
Bailed him up, yep.
Had a few meetings over that 2 weeks and ended up doing the deal. As we all know, the Fairlane became a giveaway car, but the downside of that deal was it had to be legal. So the bigs and littles and the 500 all went out the window, and we ended up with a retro tech. But sometimes things happen for a reason, I guess. So yeah, that was the concept. So this is that Sydney trip. So a bit of a day off, obviously, there, out with the kids at the zoo. And then somewhere along the line, we squeezed in a little holiday on the beach.
Baywatch.
For a couple of days.
Who's that buff bloke?
Yeah, that's it. He's carrying a few kilos there, mate. And then a young fella now, he's 8 now, cruising around on his new bike.
They grow like weeds.
They do, mate. Yeah, you know all about that. So I got 35 grand in my kick from the car. I've got a deal going with Street Machine for the next car. So I thought, well, coming from a building family, maybe we just get rid of the house we're in and build a new place. So
Upsize.
Scored a half acre on the edge of town.
Okay.
And as you can see by the date there, this is the couple of weeks before Summernats.
Yep.
Starting to push a bit of dirt around to build the new shed and eventually the new house.
And it's got to be a bit bigger shed than the last one.
Much bigger shed. So still had to do the Nats, so there we are selling programs. And then fully participated, did all the driving events, and the car won top judged and ended up winning grand champion. And one of the things that always stick in my mind is we got to lead the parade.
Yep. Around the oval?
No. Into town.
Oh, into town.
Back when the Super Cruise
forgetting how far back we go.
Super Cruise, so this is Summernats 4. Yeah, so that was, out the gate, all the way up to Parliament House and back. And I think that was the last year because everyone, long story, we're running out of time. In my file of goodies, I thought that was interesting.
Things that you don't throw away.
The letter from Chick congratulating me on winning, but I was interested to see it was $3.5 grand for grand champion and $2.5 for judged, and it was for overseas travel. But I was a bit busy, so I managed to get the cash out of them and took it home to spend on my shed. So the car's gone now. That's Mario. Young Mario was 18, won the car, and he rang, I think, his uncle by memory, and they turned up with the trailer and we loaded it on and
towed it behind a HQ Monaro.
Bye. There she went. So we move on. So that was the Nats out of the way. So then we headed, I headed back home, or we all headed back home, and then I'm back on the tools. So this is the shed, and
it won't build itself.
When you get the block of land that looks pretty flat until you put this really long shed on it. So I did all this myself, all the formwork and stuff on it, and it was like a metre high at the back.
Wow.
But there's the shed.
That's a big shed.
So I built the shed, no fences, no nothing, and with the aim to build the Fairlane. So this got built from just before Summernats to Easter, and then we rolled the Fairlane in that next year and built it in the next 9 months.
Okay.
And as that was going on, started building the house and all that sort of thing. And you can see the car on the left there. That was another Fairlane I picked up for $100 from up in Tibooburra or somewhere, and used it for spares and cuts. Yeah, so that was the big ranch, and I thought this time I better throw in some photos, because that sort of finishes where that all got to.
Yep.
Some photos of where Rock 3's now at. And Mario still owns the car, and we were fortunate enough to be in contact with him and went through the process to clean the car up for the 30th anniversary of Summernats. And it had had a few little changes here and there, and with his permission I put all of those changes back to how the car was originally.
Yep.
And we'll cover that in the build series of the actual car. So this was 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm sure the car
just outside. Yep.
Just outside here, and it would still look like that today.
Yep.
All I did was cut and polish it. I didn't actually do any paint repair on it. There's a little bit of humidity blisters in the boot lid, a little bit of that bog coming through here and there in engine bays and stuff, but in general terms,
The car's
it cleaned
30,
up pretty darn good.
30 plus years old now.
Yep. And this was taken after we'd cleaned it up.
Yep.
And then these shots were done when Street Machine reshot it after it had been to Summernats 30. And you can see the mats that I was talking about. So all that's all original.
Yep.
And that was a really good shot of that 3-pod dash and the stereo that I was talking about earlier.
It's like a Eurovox stereo. I
That's
had one
it.
of them.
Yeah, one of them.
Had one of them. They were all the rage.
And then I got on to Adam and Kylie from Perry's Garage, because I don't have a trailer anymore, to actually give us a hand to take that down. So I entrusted it with them to take it down the Nats, and we just got a tilt tray from their house out to the Nats. And then that was it set up on the display, and I still had the original display boards and all the bits and pieces from the car.
Because you didn't throw anything away.
To be able to display it like that. And that was a real buzz. I really,
Yeah.
So that's where it's at, and it's still all together, and it's
Still around.
exactly how it
Yep.
was built. So, mate, got through that. We've done 55 minutes again. But, I mean, I really enjoy the process with you, Dale. Makes it
Good fun.
easy. And this time we're only a year and a bit, or 2 years.
Shows you what you can do in a year.
Yeah.
Bucket loads.
So, thanks for joining us, people. We should be back on track now.
Yep.
To get the next one done in a couple of weeks' time. And of course, the next one now will be the Fairlane. And I'm not sure how much we'll get done in that, but we build a house, we build another shed, build another car,
Stay tuned. You'll
trip
find
around.
out.
Yeah, we actually dragged ourselves all the way over to Western Australia with that one. So, thanks for joining us.
Yep.
Thanks for your help, Dale.
Thank you.
And,
if you like the video, hit the like button.
Of course, we've got to do all that stuff, haven't we?
Don't forget to subscribe.
Ask questions,
Ask questions.
all those sorts of things.
Howard loves to answer comments.
Yeah. Living the dream.
That's it. We'll
Thanks,
see
Dale.
you next time.
Bye bye.
Cheers.